In this episode of another Zelda podcast, Kate and David talk about some of their favorite Gorons.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of another Zelda podcast. My name is Kate Fischer, and I am here, as always, with my wonderful co-host, Dave Geisler.
Howdy, Kate. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well.
Good.
I'm quite well. We finally have had some nice weather here in the Midwest.
Yes, though we were talking about how we are lucky to always have a crappy day when we're recording, so we are happy to be inside doing this. Well, we're always happy to be inside doing this, but...
We got to do a couple of these episodes like from a park.
Yeah,
and it's just birds and like kids
that'd
the whole
be
way.
Lovely.
Trucks going back.
No one would be distracted by that at all.
How about the fifth temple?
I thought it was very difficult.
I'm really glad that we're doing this out in the world.
Why would you be talking like that?
I don't know. It's like a weird Mickey Mouse. I don't know what
Is that
that
what
is.
happens when you go outside?
I think I raised my voice because it's like as if you were yelling, but I didn't want to yell on the show here.
Maybe we live on a planet where there's way too much helium.
It's all helium out there, and that's
that
what you got to be careful
situation?
about Earth is that it's all helium. Not nitrogen and oxygen.
So that was an interesting tangent. This episode. So on this episode, we are going to be talking about our favorite adorable rock-eating brothers, the Gorons.
Yeah, I am kind of excited about this one. We've never really picked a style of character yet to talk about.
Yes, and I'm sure we will, do more of these in the future with the Zoras and whatnot. But so the Gorons are they're all over the place. They come up in basically every game ever. They're all over. We've picked a few of our favorites. This is not a top 5 or top 10 or anything like that. They're not in any order, but we're just kind of picking some buddies.
Yeah, we're kind of getting a theme to some of these episodes. Sometimes we do our top 10s where there is an order and we try to build a list. Then we kind of have these what I'm calling the favorites episodes. We even have a playlist like that in our YouTube. And it's just generally talking about things that we like. Then we have our our review episodes and then deep dives and stuff like that. So I do have some listener feedback too, in fact, that I'd like to talk about. First, we're recording this just after Memorial Day weekend. How was your Memorial Day?
Lovely. So much outdoors action, bike riding and beer garden visiting and just being outside as much as humanly possible.
That's cool.
Yes.
Leona and I, on our Memorial Day, we were there's a new podcast that 6.5 Media is making called the T-Fix podcast.
Yes.
And we had scheduled, and Leona's hosting that one, and we had scheduled to record that on Memorial Day, the 0 episode. So not like a first episode, but like a practice run. And maybe we'll still publish it. Kind of a pilot, yeah. And she's recording that with a guy named Jeffrey Norman, and he lives in Oregon. And so we were going to actually use Memorial Day to record that episode because no one had work that day. So it'd be a good time.
Sure.
Anyway, Jeff ended up having a commitment. So all of a sudden, kind of by accident, Leona and I legitimately had a holiday day available.
To do whatever you want.
Because usually our days are filled with business and production and whatever.
Right.
And we were like, what should we do? We didn't have a Memorial Day party to go to because we didn't plan to go to any friends' parties or anything. And so on a whim, we thought, well, let's go on down to the Oak Street Beach over there in Chicago. So basically the big beach kind of by Navy Pier, a little bit north of Navy Pier. Behind you is the John Hancock building and stuff if you're on that beach.
Cool.
So we went down there. It was a super hot day in Chicago. It was up high 90s.
Yes.
And actually we had a couple days clocking at 100 there this past week in Chicago.
Gosh.
And unlike today where it's actually down to in the 50s and 60s again, which is weird. So anyway, we went there, but it was insane. It was more people than I could ever imagine.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I think on a normal beach day, you could say, I probably would not be excited about a situation like that. But because it was Memorial Day, because it was unexpected,
You're in the spirit of things.
it was kind of for the fun of it.
Sure.
We went into the crowd and hundreds of people were on that beach, and it actually was really fun.
We specifically avoided a beach for that reason.
I think I normally would,
Yeah.
but we kind of thought, well, it's weird. It's on a whim. Let's go have an adventure.
Nice.
And we sat in some spot kind of halfway up the beach. It was okay, but then we were able to get a spot right on the water, right by the water, and then spent a couple hours there. It was great.
Yes.
And so you went to some beer gardens here in Milwaukee or something?
Yeah, we did a 20-mile total bike ride and went all over the place. It was very cool because we had not ridden our bikes that long yet.
I see.
We got them fairly recently, a few months ago, and had not yet done like a nice long bike ride. So we did that.
We do have one Memorial Day themed, or I guess themed comment here from M Brennan 91 on Instagram. He was replying to, he commented on one of our posts. I think specifically it might have been our 10 favorite boss battles episode on Instagram. And he just said, thanks for making the Memorial Day traffic bearable. Can't wait for more episodes. Keep doing what you're doing.
That's why I love podcasts. They make driving slightly less painful.
I literally listened to 2 podcasts while driving up to Milwaukee this morning.
Yep. I have many that I listen to on my way to work, which is like a 45-minute drive. So it's our pleasure because
nice.
We know how that can be for sure.
Now, I actually have one more. I have a tweet I'd like to read too, because this kind of applies to our favorite boss battles episode, but also what we're talking about today.
Okay.
Digging Podcast, at Digging Podcast on Twitter, I think it's a he or she or it. It is a podcast that I think specifically talks about 6 Feet Under and Dexter and stuff like that.
Okay.
I think this one might be themed for reviews of 6 Feet Under. But anyway, Digging Podcast said, another Zelda pod, listen to your Fire Dungeon episode. Oh, that's what they're referring to. Listen to your Fire Dungeon episode regarding Fyrus from Twilight Princess, which you might remember we talked about. Fyrus he's the big, I call him the Belrog.
Yeah.
The on fire Goron.
Yes, with the chains.
Well, at Digging Podcast here says, regarding Fyrus from Twilight Princess, I always saw Fyrus boss as an homage to King Kong, specifically the 1933 version. You mentioned it was something from Lord of the Rings, but I could see both similarities. And Digging Podcast here on our Twitter feed put up a photo of King Kong in his shackles or whatever on stage, and it's almost the same pose as Fyrus. And I think that's a fair comparison.
Yeah, I saw those pictures, and I think both the Lord of the Rings and the King Kong something
cool.
can have more than one inspiration.
Well, and that when Fyrus is in his resting state as you come in, I do see the captured beast, the King Kong things there is very similar. So today, we're doing more Gorons.
Yes, and maybe he'll come up later. Who knows?
Ooh.
I don't know. So, they're one of the oldest confirmed races. They are found in I have a list of all the games. So they're in Ocarina, Majora's Mask, Oracle of Ages and Seasons, Wind Waker, not really, but barely.
Are they referenced in Wind Waker? We just played Wind Waker.
Barely. So they are like the traveling salesmen. If you even found one. Yeah, they're very hard to find. They're only on a few islands, I think, and they're just kind of randomly walking around. I don't know if you did the I don't think you did the salesman quest.
I didn't.
Side quest.
Yeah, we spoke about that.
So they're part of that. So you find one, and you're not told that they're a Goron or anything like that. They're not even hinted at. But then once you find it, they're like, oh. And then they actually say something like, oh, I know you. You look familiar. Never mind. I shouldn't say that. So they kind of wink.
Interesting.
The timeline of it.
Gorons live for a long time, I think, right?
Yes. So there's something I read, I don't even know, some hundreds of years, something like that.
Sure.
So they stick around for a while, and they're all male for
I
some
don't
reason.
want to spoil anything, but there are some island-based Gorons in other Wind Waker sequels that we'll talk about.
Aha. All right. Sounds good. Four Swords, Minish Cap, Twilight Princess, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild. They're in everything.
Easily a staple.
I found mentions of them in everything when I was kind of preparing for this. So.
I think release schedule-wise, Ocarina might have been the first time that we were introduced to them, but timeline-wise, they're right there in Skyward Sword.
Yep. They're there from the start. You always find them in the volcano-ish areas, the fire-related areas.
There are some exceptions, but usually a mountain-type setting.
Yep, so they are resistant to fire and lava and all that fun stuff. And I like them because they all seem to be generally in a good mood. There are exceptions to that as well.
Sometimes they get grouchy and then they like you.
Yeah, right, so they're not super friendly in Twilight Princess, for example, which...
is a twist a little bit.
Yeah, and I was not a fan of that because I'm like, hey, you guys are supposed to be my buddies and my brothers. What's the deal, man?
What happened?
So, so that's the one reason I like them a lot, because the Zora can kind of seem a little conceited and a little full of themselves. So the Gorons are always like, I'm always happy to see them to get to that part of the game because I know they're going to be somewhere, right?
Right.
They're going to be somewhere in the game. And whenever I see them, I'm like, well, I like them.
You know, it's interesting because as I was putting together notes for this episode, I know from previous episodes that you enjoy the Gorons very much, and I've hinted to this, but they're usually at kind of one of the more boring parts of a game for me, which is really weird to say. And I find myself usually liking the Zoras more. But I think you're really onto something. I think the Gorons usually have a generally more welcoming disposition. The Zoras usually are a bit more sassy. Sometimes the Zoras have got their own issues. And I think at the end of the day, I have to be honest, and I learned this, but when I was putting my notes together and remembering how many Gorons there are that I do like, I don't think it's necessarily Gorons and Zoras that I might prefer one to the other. I think it's more that I usually just like the water mechanics that are in Zora domains and stuff like that. I always love going up Zora River. That goes all the way back to the Ocarina, where I love traveling up Zora River. And in other versions where that's expressed, water temples is a different conversation. But like, I think I often enjoy Zora's domain or whatever more than like a Goron.
I can totally see that.
Volcano.
Especially because the fire and lava elements, you're definitely restricted more so in those regions, whereas the water you can swim all over and, for a varying length of time, depending on what game you're playing.
But I'm happy we're doing this episode because it really did remind me that, no, the Gorons are super cool and really fun.
Yeah.
And so I think I would kind of redact my thought of Zoras being better than Gorons, to be honest.
Well, we're here to change minds and open minds.
Change worlds and change hearts.
Change the world.
Really just trying to save the world every other week.
That's why we're here. Why we're here. So do you want to get into some of your favorites?
Sure.
Would you like to go first? I'll be the gracious host.
Maybe we could, well, thank you very much. I think I think there's some staples that I'm sure you have in your notes, and so I did a little less collection on them. People like Darunia and Daruk and all that kind of stuff, and I can't wait to talk about those characters. But the one character that's represented that I feel is represented the most across the most games is the infamous Goron. And I remember when I first came across Goron in Ocarina, which was the first realization of that character, though I think they're also represented in the timeline before that, certainly. In high school, when I was playing Ocarina of Time, I was a little sassy about it. I was like, Goron, really? That's the name of this character?
How creative.
Yeah, I was like, that's so dumb. But I thought the character was cool.
Because he's big is
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Big
I don't know
Goron.
I don't know if you put that together.
Big Goron. Though one thing that I think was really super cool about the Goron in Ocarina is that they positioned that character so much that you got used to seeing these Gorons basically be represented or disguise themselves as rocks, loosely. That's kind of what's going on. And then all of a sudden to find that there's a character that's disguised himself as essentially an entire mountain, you know what I mean? Or a whole hill at least, was really cool. And to know that you had kind of seen his back for a while in the game and didn't realize it was cool. So I don't want to take anything away from Goron except for the name. And you kind of wonder if there's things that are changed in translation a little bit. I know that, and we have another Goron here that has a clever name that I'll get to later, but I do know that the Japanese names for many of these characters, a lot of times they can play on the semantics of the Japanese name, and then it might mean 2 or 3 different things at once. And so I think when those names are getting translated to English, perhaps the English team says, oh, I get it, that's a pun in Japanese.
Gotcha.
Let's kind of make it a pun in English, and maybe it's a little less romantic. Big Goron. You know what I mean? Contextually in Japanese, I don't really know this. I got to find out the name of it. Now I'm actually really curious to dig a little deeper into Goron's Japanese name.
Yeah.
However,
it's exactly Big Goron, but in Japanese.
It's like literally just that. But maybe there's a twist on the
Goron.
context. Yeah, right? So for us, it's Goron. So Goron appears in Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Oracle of Seasons, The Minish Cap, and Phantom Hourglass. I didn't realize it was that many times.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I definitely know that Goron shows up in Minish Cap because I just played Minish Cap.
Okay.
And I'm starting to play Oracle of Seasons right now. I think I spoke in a previous episode that I found it at a game shop, actually in Kenosha, between our two places that we live. And I'm really excited to start playing that. I might save it for one of our review episodes. I think our next review episode will be Minish Cap, and maybe we'll do that in a couple, 5 or 6 episodes. So you will definitely meet the Goron again in Minish. And I also remembered that Goron is in Phantom Hourglass, but he's represented just a little differently. He's definitely the biggest Goron on the island, but he's not this towering mutant of a mountain type character. He's just kind of a big character. And he has a son named Gongoron or Gongoron, depends on how you want to pronounce these accents. But Gongoron, in my opinion, would be pronounced that way. He interacts with the temple. He's like a little kid. He goes into the temple in Phantom Hourglass, gets lost. You go save him. He kind of becomes the mid-temple item, quote unquote. Okay. And then you can kind of control him, and he helps you go through that temple. Okay. But I digress. So Begoron, in Oracle of Seasons, I have not come across the Begoron yet because I've only just started it, but I do have a screenshot here of the Begoron in Oracle of Seasons.
So adorable. It's like a little potato.
So
like
look
a
at these
smiling potato.
I am showing Kate a graphic right now. Look at these graphics on the bottom. It's like colored in Link's Awakening, but then like newer graphics of Begoron.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? I think you're going to enjoy Minish Cap, and I'm even more excited for you to do Seasons and Ages, maybe in season 2. Season 2 of this show or something.
Yeah. And without this podcast, I probably never would have played those games as much as I love Legend of Zelda, just because it's like going backwards.
I know what you mean.
Quote unquote. So I'm really happy to be able to do that now.
Well, certainly when we review Skyward Sword, I'll be forced to get back into that and take it, really dive in and take it seriously. And hopefully,
you'll be so happy and excited.
Hopefully, I'll be able to cull some positive feelings off.
I think you will. Game. I think you will. It's not all bad. Just like when we reviewed Wind Waker and we weren't super thrilled with it, it's also not all bad. Like there are definitely fun parts to the games.
That episode, last week's episode or 2 weeks ago. It was like the happiest frustrated episode I think we've ever done. We were like, Potts' game are great, but oh my goodness, the second half. But it's so great, but it's so bad.
It's so terrible.
That was like that whole episode. But anyway, it's all right.
It could have used more Gorons.
Could have used, yeah, fair enough. Maybe not just abstract references. So I come up with Begoron is I think a staple, a character that must be talked about. And so what's one that you have that's one of your, and honestly, Begoron, is it one of my favorites? I don't know, but I think, we'd be remiss not to discuss Begoron.
He has the eye problem in Ocarina, right? He needs the eye drops.
That's right.
He's so sad. Oh, my heart goes out to the big, adorable Gorons. What do you think? Why are only some of them that gigantic? Why do you think that is?
So lore-wise, I don't know. I think they are organic. I think they have skin. I don't think they're necessarily made of rock, but I could be wrong about that. I think they
eat rocks.
They eat rocks, and I think their backs are very rock-like. But I would say that the way that they're represented in Skyward and Twilight Princess, I feel that their graphic style tells us that they have like a real hide kind of skin, like maybe rhinoceros style skin, something that's really, really strong and hard. Mm-hmm. But it does seem to not be, they're not like the Thing from Fantastic Four or something like that, right?
Maybe he just ate the most rocks and he grew real big.
So we don't have like mini Gorons. They're not small that way.
There's like kids though. There's like that kid in Ocarina who's rolling around and you have to catch him. Like that one's a littler guy.
There are many representations of children Gorons.
And how do they have kids? There's no female Gorons.
So maybe it is one of these asexual things where they come from the rock, honestly.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? They may not even be a like a sexual kind of relationship. They might just be growing.
I would want to play a spin-off Goron game.
A Goron dating sim? That's what you want? No. Do you know what the Goron dating sim would be? It would just be like, hi, hello, there we are.
Let us go to the rock restaurant on this date.
Yeah. They wouldn't even have dates if they're like...
No, I guess not.
Reproducing asexually. But anyway, this is getting weird.
This is getting really weird. No, because they're not... So the Zoras, they seem more humanoid. I don't know. Gorons are weird. And there's zero explanation about any of them. So I want to get more background.
Why is Begoron big? That's something we'll have to discover.
We'll have to write a song.
If anyone listening right now, we'll have to write a song about it.
Yeah.
I'm into that. I am into that in a big way. Maybe on our season break we can do something like that.
Like that really offensive song in Peter Pan about why the red man is red. We'll have to sing about why Big Goron is big.
We'll offend Begorons everywhere.
It will be less offensive, I promise.
So yeah, I don't know, but if anybody has any thoughts as to why the Begorons are so large, tweet us at another Zelda pod, or you can if you're
give us your conspiracy theories.
Seriously, yeah, or you can message us on our Facebook page, Another Zelda Podcast, and because we actually do get a fair amount of messages through Facebook, which I think is great. And if you're listening to the episode on YouTube right now or watching us on YouTube, just throw a comment down in the bottom.
Yeah,
and that goes for all of the Gorons that no doubt we will be speaking of.
Yeah,
going forward here.
So I guess I will go to one that I've talked about before, so this one will be pretty quick. But yeah, it's my buddy Darunia from Ocarina of Time, because that was the first like before you get to him, you're kind of meeting these characters and you're like, okay, so these are just random things that say random characters that say one thing to you, and then they hide back into themselves. And
Oh, the
you're
Goron
kind
specific.
of wondering,
You mean when you're
on your-
approaching the city? I see.
when you're on your
I
way
see.
there. So I was kind of like wondering, okay, where's this going? You know, and then you come to Darunia, who has all this personality, and is I called him a dancing machine in my notes.
He almost refers to himself as such.
Yeah, so
He's very proud of his dancing skills.
Oh yes, and that was probably the first point in the game because it's early-ish, with the different like camera angles where it's like,
Ooh, I thought it was so cool.
Yeah.
Back in 1994 or whatever it was.
I was like, oh, this is so cool. And it's
so cinematic.
Funny when he's like, oh, I love this song. Ah.
Yeah, it's a little, because you have to read it. So you're just hearing like, oh, the feeling. I love it. So it just moves my body.
Yeah,
and you're
with,
like,
with no voice acting. So yeah, just the
him
music
shaking
and the,
around.
and the camera angles. Yeah, so it made me laugh. So yeah, he's the first.
Oh, it's
Goron.
also funny because he's kind of appears to be a little grouchy in the beginning, and then
Right.
when he hears the song and he just really gets moved by the spirit.
He's like, I love this song and I love you.
Yeah, right.
And then you're best friends for life.
Best friends for life, it's true.
That's why I like him and Gorons in general, because at some point, most of them are like, okay, we're best friends now. And I'm like, I wish it was always that easy.
He likes you so much, he names his son after you.
Oh, yes. Yes, I forgot about that. And he calls you brother right away and wants all the hugs. So I just like, and he's very generous because he gives Link the Goron's bracelet first, then the Goron's ruby and a fire medallion.
Wow.
He's just like Santa Claus Goron.
He really does, and he kind of gives that first item, the bracelet. I think he gives that off pretty quickly, right?
I think so. He's
I
just
think
like,
you do like one thing for him. Maybe you just play the song.
here you go.
Yeah.
And they all seem like, precious heirlooms. So he's just like, here you go, and here you go, and here you go. Take all my things. I love you.
Like all three, like really special things.
Yeah. He's like, you can have them.
That's funny.
I don't need
Does he know he's a sage in that game, or does he realize he's a sage when you get to the fire temple or the volcano? I can't
Hard to
recall.
say.
Because some of the characters in Ocarina are like, yes, I am the sage. And then like, I think if I'm not mistaken, Saria's like, I guess I was the sage. I never knew.
Yep. I remember that. I don't know.
And I was thinking, like, if he knew he was a sage, maybe he'd be a little more willing to fulfill, I guess, prophecies or whatever by giving these items to Link or something. I'm just trying to make sense of it all.
No, that makes sense. And I'll have to play it again to.
We'll just
go
have
back.
to play it again.
Oh no! I'm so sad. I'll have to play Ocarina of Time.
Maybe
again.
Ocarina of Time could be like our season 2 opening episode. I think that'd be fun. I don't know. We'll see.
Cool.
Anyway.
I mean, I'm already. I was playing it like off and on, and I last played through the water temple. So I'm already on my way. So yeah, we can definitely do that. So yeah, he's the character, the first one I really remember and I really liked.
Darunia.
Yeah, so that's one of my picks.
Sweet. Well, if we go in kind of release order, Darmani the Third is a Goron in Majora's Mask.
Okay.
And he kind of is the Darunia of Majora's Mask, but also the Gorons in general in Majora's Mask, they live on a Snowhead Mountain. I might be getting that wrong, but they live on a mountain made of snow. They're not lava-based. It's all snow-based.
Interesting. The world's gone upside down.
Well, it is. It was definitely a twist when you go into Majora's Mask and you're going towards this snowy area. Is there really snow in Ocarina? I don't recall that there is.
There's ice.
Yeah.
Because, Zora's Domain freezes over.
Zora's Domain freezes over. That's as close as it gets.
Yeah.
But I recall in Majora's Mask in the late 90s going towards this mountain of snow and having no idea who I was going to meet. And then all of a sudden Gorons start popping up and you're like, what? But I guess
This isn't right.
they're durable for cold as they are durable for heat, I guess.
That makes sense.
They're not. Yeah, that's a good point. They're durable. It's not that they necessarily have to be in hot environments.
They can just take it.
Right. If it was like a creature that had to be in a warm environment, they would be this thin little creature. And if they were in a snow environment, they'd be freezing, right? I don't know. I'm trying to, again, make sense of it all.
Who knows?
So Darmani the Third, he is the character. I think you know that in Majora's Mask. I know you haven't gotten that far into it, but you receive essentially 4 different masks that will transform Link into different characters that have different abilities.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
I
And
started it at least.
Darmani the Third is the one that gives you your Goron mask.
Okay.
And then that allows Link to turn into a Goron who can do special roles and kind of get spikes that stick out. And he's actually dead. You meet him as a ghost.
Oh. Oh, no.
He had an accident, and if you look closely, he has a huge gash going through his
Oh,
stomach.
God.
It's a little weird, but it's not like bleeding or anything. It's almost one of those things where as a kid, I didn't realize. And then when I was researching him, I looked at some screenshots, and I was like, oh.
This game is dark. Literally.
He took a spill or something, ripped his gut open. But anyway, so you play a song, and you release him of his fret. It's the Song of Souls or something. You release him of his fret, and he gives you the Goron mask in return, which allows you to go into Snowheed Mountain. I don't have research on that one. I'm probably getting that name wrong. We'll probably get a couple tweets, but I invite them. Please let us know. But that was a cool thing. Darmani III, he kind of comes and goes. He's there. You release him. His spirit,
Sure. So it wouldn't really make a lot of sense for him to come back, but does he come back?
What I'm trying to say is I don't think he's like a Darunia character that gets reused a few times in the narrative, if I recall correctly. But it has been a while since I've played Majora's Mask to that point. So I couldn't help but think about Darmani III. He kind of has a similar graphic style to Darunia.
Okay.
But he's actually kind of dark and purple and stuff because of the ghost thing. But anyway.
They're probably all, I was going to say maybe they're related, but they're all like related because they all call each other brother. So who knows? Maybe it's just one family.
So, that's
that
very
lives forever.
interesting. That brother thing obviously feels like the kind of like it's a cultural. They just call everyone brother who's now in their family. And maybe because they don't have mothers and fathers, they just have children, a bit like how plants grow. And I'm not joking about this. Maybe it is a single family. It is a family in the abstract. And that's why they call people who are part of their family brother.
I think we're going to write the next great American novel about Gorons and the history of Gorons. The end.
Oh, my. So I'm sure you have some Gorons from Twilight Princess or Breath of the Wild or something.
Actually, my next one is from Skyward Sword.
Is it Gorko?
It is Gorko.
Let's talk about him.
Yeah. So he is one character in that game. There are not a lot of them where every time I see him, I go, oh, good, it's that guy.
Oh, really?
And genuinely go, oh, good, it's that guy. Because sometimes in that game, I will come across a character and go, oh, good, it's that guy.
In Skyward specifically.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. So he is the archaeologist, and he's studying the surface and Skyloft, and it's always kind of amusing because he's telling you about these things that you either already know about, maybe, or he has this wild guess on what these things are or mean, and you're like, haha, no.
Bit of a scientist almost.
But he is helpful. He's kind of like your other guide other than Fee or Phi or whatever you want to call it.
So I've always said Fee.
Okay,
but
sure. No, that makes sense. So he's kind of like your other guide because he's telling you about the goddess walls. He tells you about the goddess cubes, which are of course helpful to your whole quest. Tells you about the gossip stones. Tells you about the blessed butterflies. And so yeah, he's very knowledgeable, very friendly and helpful, and you kind of get to help him out a bit as well because you're always kind of like freeing up his path in order to so he can research more stuff. So he does come into the story in like little ways. He's not super involved, but someone you keep kind of coming across and running into, he seems to be on the same path as you. And he's always just a nice, friendly guy.
That's interesting. Gorko represents two kind of Goron tropes as far as I'm concerned in the Zelda series. He represents the traveling Goron, which is a repeating theme, which we see in Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild.
Wind Waker then too.
And Wind Waker, you're right. And then he also kind of represents in some ways, other games like Twilight Princess realize this a little bit more concretely, but he's definitely this kind of like, you're often opening paths for Gorons in Zelda games. And in something like Minish Cap, they actually help you open a path, but they're often some kind of stopgate. Even Goron City in Ocarina, you have to get the bombs to start bombing through big boulders and stuff.
Yep.
To get to Big Goron's brother. Remember him who makes the bad sword?
Yes.
I forget his name though. But yeah. There's a lot of times where you have to go get something for a Goron, and they'll help open up a path to do something. That definitely happens in Twilight. But the traveling Goron, that's a thing.
Yeah. I guess I didn't really put that connection together, but
the Gorons are friendly, but I do get the sense that they have their culture and they don't travel outside of it too much. There's a lot of,
You always come upon like one of them.
Yeah.
Kind of out and about.
Yeah, there's the one rogue Goron.
You have like a scout that they send out.
A little bit. Now, as I think about it, Twilight Princess, you'll see a few Minish Cap. You eventually actually kind of employ 3 Gorons to help you break through some rocks. But for the most part, yeah, there is this kind of idea. Whereas I feel like the Zoras hide a lot. They're like, our hidden river or whatever thing.
Right.
The Gorons, maybe their culture is closed off a little bit just because nobody else lives there. They don't have to hide, but they live in this environment.
No one else can really live there.
Where many of the other carbon-based life forms just in Hyrule don't want to be in that space. It'd be dangerous for them.
Right.
I wonder if that's a thing. So that feeds the traveling Goron idea.
Yeah.
Gorko.
Oh, Gorko. He's just, he's a guy that every time I saw him, I was like, oh, good, I get to talk to him. And what does he need? And I want to help him out. What does he need? I'll do whatever.
Once in a while with Gorko, I would see him and I thought, oh no, what fetch quest do I need to do now? But for the most part,
it never really turned out
it never works that way.
Like that.
Exactly.
Too badly, at least.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's not bad. Well, I tell you what, Kate, why don't we go to break quickly here, and then we'll come back. I have some Gorons to talk about. We need to talk about Markagoro. We need to talk about Link. We need to talk about some Gorons in Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess. So let's take a break, and I want to hear what some of your other favorite Gorons might be as well.
All right, sounds good.
All right, I'll see you in a half a minute or a minute.
Okay.
Hey everyone, David Geisler here, and I am very excited to share that we have just launched our Patreon page for Another Zelda podcast. Patreon is a great way for creators to grow their content, and we're really looking forward to using this space as a way to say thank you to our listeners. We'd love to have your support, and we've put together some rewards that we're pretty excited about. Things like additional uncut bonus content, custom wallpapers, and of course, early access to all of our episodes. So if you like, after the show, head on over to our page at patreon.com/Another Zelda Podcast. You can also find a link to the page in our show notes. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to another Zelda podcast. We are back from our break and ready to continue talking Goron.
It's true. And Kate, before we went to break, I kind of misread my notes here a little bit. I was talking about Markagoro, which is a Goron that actually we just spoke about. I was reading my notes incorrectly. Gorko, who we were just talking about, the French translation or the French version of The Legend of Zelda, his name is Markagoro.
Oh.
Does that sound familiar? Does it sound like a play on words to you at all? A traveling Goron? It's believed that that's a play on Marco Polo, and even Gorko might be a slight play on Marco Polo.
Interesting.
Is what the internet feels.
Okay, I can see that. Okay.
So Markagoro, that's a thing.
I like it. I like their little hints and nods and winks.
Oh yeah. Like the real subtle ones, like Bagoron.
Yeah, super subtle. I couldn't put that together. All right. So that one was mine. So I believe it is your turn.
Me, sure. Yeah, I've talked about a few here, but why don't we discuss? Let's talk about Daruk a little bit. I have him on the list. I'm sure you have him on your list as well.
I do. I like him.
And specifically Daruk, not the champion, not to be confused with some of the other Gorons you meet in Breath of the Wild that are also perfectly pleasant as well. And we can speak about them if you like as well. But Daruk might be my favorite Goron in the entire series. Honestly.
I like him a lot.
I think he's just kind of cool from the beginning, in my opinion. You don't really get to experience him too much except for the cutscenes. It's true. But in the cutscenes, he seems like a cool guy.
Yeah.
You may only experience him in the cutscenes. I think there's a little bit of he talks a little bit as a ghost, looking down on his family a little bit after defeating the big chameleon or the big lizard beast.
He also has a journal that you can find and read.
Wait, I think I did not find that yet.
I didn't either. I had to find this on the internet. Where
is it? I'm going to go find tonight. I'm going to
I don't
look
know where it is. Go find it.
Kate,
But there's information in it that gives way more background and personality to him. And I'm kind of bummed that that's how you have to find it out. I wish that was kind of more just provided. But what were you going to say?
So he has what's the name of the younger Goron that's his descendant that you
help? It starts with a Y, I think. Is it
Young Goron?
That would have been appropriate. You're talking about the one that you kind of have to find.
He's got the little floppy white hair. The younger guy with the backpack that helps you. Yeah, you go find him.
Yunobo?
Oh, Yunobo, yeah.
Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
His descendant? Yunobo?
Yunobo's fine. He's kind of cool. You find him at first, you think he's going to be a little punk, and he ends up being nice.
Yeah. And he's super excited to see Daruk when you see his spirit form. He's like, hi! I'm waving emphatically. You can't see this, listeners, but I'm waving. Oh, I hit the microphone. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. I remember being kind of touched by that moment in the game, actually. It wasn't a tearjerker, but it was a nice moment.
It's like, aw.
Because all the other champions, they have, I mean, certainly Mipha has a lot of emotional moments, but I think Daruk is the only one that has like family lineage. You know? And it was cool to see him be proud.
His so this is I think the first time you hear a Goron talk. And it's like exactly what I was thinking a Goron would sound like. It was perfect. We're kind of talking like this. Daruk's protection. And I was like, it was perfect. I was like, this is what I have been picturing since Ocarina, you know, what they actually sounded like. So I just thought the voice acting was perfect.
Yes, I think it was quite spot on. That's interesting. And it's funny because sometimes that voice performer has to kind of do more timid lines. You know, sometimes he's not always yelling and shouting in some of the cutscenes. Certainly some of the DLC, he talks a bit more calm, you could say.
Okay. And the same person voiced Daruk and other characters too. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
In Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, I think his name is Joe Hernandez, if I remember correctly. So yeah, he did multiple Goron voices.
I see. Well, there was a little factoid about Ocarina of Time. Zelda, is it Mipha? Rudo.
Yeah.
Zelda, Rudo, and Saria are all voiced by the same vocal talent in Ocarina. Though I think there it's mostly just
yeah. I was gonna say that didn't do too much in there.
Hey Jerry, get Nancy from marketing over here. We just need her talking to a microphone real quick.
We just need her to go. And that's it.
Yeah, so Daruk, we get to hear him talk. He's cool. I like that you can see some pain in his eyes during like the cutscene with Zelda's ceremony where she's coronating Link, and they know that it's all kind of futile, and you can see that he's caring and stuff like that. It's cool.
He's also like kind of the leader where he's like, we have to do something about this. He kind of calls everyone to action.
But more specifically, it's from an emotional component, not like a headstrong, let's just go fight with force kind of component. It is. He's an emotional character in my opinion.
Yeah, he's multifaceted and like more character development that I've seen in a lot of other characters. And so apparently once you find this journal, you learn a couple things about him.
You pulled this off the internet here?
I did.
Excellent.
So he has a fear of dogs, apparently.
That happens in the DLC.
Okay.
He gets really scared of some dogs.
Yeah. So apparently he had some kind of incident in his youth where he was chased by dogs, and now he has a fear of dogs, which is his one true weakness, which how do they even think of that? Like, it blows my mind.
And in the DLC, it's not even wolves; it's just dogs. It's like the dogs that you see at horse stables.
Okay, yeah.
He fights off
that's
some
what I figured it
Yeah.
had to be.
Sorry, yeah. He fights off some bad guys, and he's super cool, and all of a sudden he freezes, and Zelda's like, "What's going on in this DLC that I'm trying to somehow represent to you?" And he's just frozen, and it's just dogs just hanging out, and one of them like barks or eats some meat or something. I can't quite remember, and he like runs away like a little scaredy cat.
Weird. I kind of would have loved to be a fly on the wall while the team is discussing, we're going to make him scared of dogs. I don't know.
Well, I think they do like to contrast the bruteness of the Gorons, like Gorko, who is excited about the butterflies, something really strong, enjoying something delicate, or just that contrast a little bit.
Adorable their faces are, but like how rocky and stony their bodies are.
Yeah. Almost baby-like their faces in many ways. Yeah. Certainly the early ones.
What else? So I don't know if I couldn't recall if this is in the journal or if this was mentioned in the game itself. But So he and Link become sworn brothers in Breath of the Wild, just like in Ocarina. And apparently they do this after bonding about food. They talk about how much they love food.
That could
or the types of food.
Be. I'm wondering if that was in the DLC as well, but I could be mistaken.
So that's why they become brothers, which
cool.
I find
that's
hilarious.
that is funny. The Gorons are a little fast and loose with bringing people into their family.
Yep, they just love everybody except in Twilight Princess, but whatever.
Yeah. In Twilight Princess, it was really just a mechanic. They needed you to not. It was like a stopgate, right? You needed to get into the volcano. And can you remind me what was the reason? It was they just didn't like you. You had to do sumo wrestling.
You had to wrestle.
They didn't respect you yet. Now there's a little bit of that in Breath of the Wild with the 3 Gorons that test their strength with like heat resistance. Maybe you haven't gotten to those side quests yet,
I'm trying to remember.
Over in, actually opposite from Death Mountain in Breath of the Wild, near the canyon, that if you were to cross the canyon, you get into the Gerudo Desert, if I remember correctly. There are some arenas that are similar to the sumo arenas from Twilight Princess, and you'll come across some Gorons that have sweatbands on, and they are practicing their heat resistance.
Oh, no, I haven't gotten to that.
And they're challenging each other to heat higher. So even technically, according to the, I'm deducing from the lore in Breath of the Wild that Gorons certainly are heat resistant, but they themselves can't step into lava. If you imagine even lava rock would melt, they would be harmed by that.
Okay.
So hot lava. And so these Gorons are practicing they're trying to increase their resistance to heat. And at the end of the day, that's just a sub quest where you have to learn to eat a bunch of spicy peppers or wear some armor or something.
Gotcha.
Basically it's just a way for the game to force you to do a mechanic in a different way that you didn't think about.
Sure.
And it does open up a shrine. And then in the DLC, that gets amped up a little bit. There's a floating piece of metal in lava, and those same 3 Gorons come back and they say, hey, we can't get out to this thing, this circle to go through this ring. Because even Gorons can't walk on lava. And so you have to be careful, and you have to try to parachute down and stuff like that.
Why would you choose to live? Okay, well, whatever.
It's still dangerous.
Lava,
it's still dangerous.
Obviously the Zoras live in the water because they can be in the water and
so
love the water. So I guess they have to be because there are rocks everywhere, right? So why can't they eat the rocks and live by the rocks in the other parts of Hyrule? I wonder, why must they be by the lava if they are harmed by the lava? Oh my gosh, so many questions.
Because theming.
So many questions. Yeah, that's true. So many questions to answer.
Interesting. So anyway, so Gorons cannot step into lava. So they work on their heat resistance. And why did I get to that with the DLC and the brothers? Oh yeah. Sometimes Gorons, the only time Gorons are actually off-putting or like resistant for you to come in is when you have to prove something like wrestling or heat resistance or something like that.
Yep. Anything else for Daruk? I like Daruk's protection a lot. I don't know if I consciously used it a lot. It just kind of happened when I was, blocking or whatever. But I found it super useful. So
I have dove back in. Have dove. I don't think that's correct. Whatever.
Have divin.
Have divin. So I've done divin down back into Breath of the Wild. What I've done is I did end up completing the DLC. I think we spoke about this early in season 1 of this show. This season of this show, I ended up getting the motorcycle, and it was all fun and good or whatever. But after a couple months, I was kind of just excited to get back into Breath of the Wild's world. Certainly, a little bit from doing this game or this show. Yes. And so I kind of thought, well, I'll explore the master quest. I'll get in there and play in master mode, basically. And so I have started replaying the game in master mode.
Yeah, I saw a little video of that. I think you posted
we were playing around. Leona and I were playing around with doing some Instagram live stuff. We might start doing some Let's Plays. Maybe we can even set you up with some Let's Plays. Maybe we do some of that in our off season when we're getting ready for season 2.
Sure.
We're just kind of exploring and experimenting right now. But So I went to the Zora's domain first when I first played Breath of the Wild. This time around, Mipha's Grace is great, but I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I want to switch this up a little bit. And I had a hard time deciding between Rivali's Gale and Daruk's Protection. And right now I'm heading towards the Rito for Rivali's Gale because of the jumping. You don't have a lot of stamina in the beginning of that game. And so
I can see where, because by the time I got it in the game, I was like, I don't care.
Don't need it. It's a pretty important mechanic. I think I got it second the first time I played.
Oh, okay.
But I seriously considered going on over to the Gorons instead. And I'm kind of still considering it because that beast isn't probably the easiest beast, I think. And Daruk's Protection is great.
Yeah.
Because it is a shield, and it also inflicts damage back.
Yes, I found it very useful throughout that game.
And in master mode, not only are the bad guys stronger and higher defense, they regain their health.
Oh.
Pretty much immediately.
Oh no.
Yeah, so
that sounds like my nightmare.
You can't, like the whole just dropping bombs for 10 minutes, not an option.
No.
It's scary.
Oh yeah, I can't.
Master mode is scary. Anyway, yeah. So Daruk, I don't know. He's got that cool mountain of him in Goron City. That mountain also includes Darunia and a couple other characters. Isn't that right? I think there's 4 characters.
Yeah, I did recall Darunia.
I recognized Darunia when I was playing the game. The others I didn't quite recognize as much.
I love the little callbacks. to Ocarina, of which there are many in Breath of the Wild. We've kind of mentioned a couple of those before.
Yes. So timeline-wise, right now, it's not official, but it's thought that that Breath is probably after Twilight. Well, IG Enuma did say that it's absolutely a sequel to Ocarina, but that could still be in any of the 3 timelines. But I feel that there are direct, like Castletown in Breath of the Wild is, in my opinion, a direct reference to the Castletown in Twilight Princess. The fountain, I don't know if you've spent too much time right in front of that castle in Breath of the Wild, but the fountain's identical and the layout of the half circle of the town is identical. So I choose that Breath of the Wild is in the heroes or the child timeline, which is essentially Ocarina, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, Breath of the Wild. And I think there's a few others in there. Technically, like the Adventures, Four Swords Adventures is wedged in there too. But I think that's
like a map.
It's a pretty nice timeline, in my opinion.
Yeah, I need a map to be drawn so I can understand all the branches.
Yeah, we could posit that Twilight Princess or that Breath of the Wild lives in the timeline that is not the one where Hyrule floods.
Okay, gotcha.
Anyways.
Well, Daruk was one of mine, so
let's see. I don't know if I have much. I could talk about Link real quick.
Okay.
So there's actually 2 Gorons in the series called Link. There is Darunia's son.
Yes.
Which is kind of just a one-off. But in Majora's Mask, there is yet another traveling Goron.
Okay.
And he is trying to get into. He has a reservation at the hotel in Clocktown. I almost called it Termania Town. In Clocktown. And on the first day, somewhere in the middle of the day, he basically comes and checks into his room. If he does that, you don't really see him much more in the course of those 3 days as far as like how he affects the story. But you learn that his name is Link. If you talk to him, you learn that his name is Link. And if you are a smart player, you may deduce that if you go to the hotel before Link does, Goron Link, you can kind of trick the hotel into giving you the room.
Sure.
Now, if you get the room, that's cool. I don't recall there much happening in the room. But if they've already given the reservation away, what it does do is it creates an alternate path for Link the Goron, who then goes out and sits in Castletown or Clocktown and does his own thing. And as a little Easter egg, he actually notices that by the end of day 1, he makes a comment if you talk to him about like, oh, it's getting humid or something like that. And that's because it always rains in day 2 in Majora's Mask.
Okay.
And so that was one thing that was kind of cool about Majora's Mask is there was a weather system. It was completely scripted. It wasn't random like Breath of the Wild, but there was weather in Majora's Mask, which I thought was super cool.
It affected the characters, or the characters would comment on it.
Yes, yes, indeed, exactly. And that's the one thing I do like about Majora's Mask, and I can't wait for us to review that one because it does, like Breath of the Wild does it better. Other games do it quite nicely, but Majora's Mask, maybe they didn't have the way to. Maybe they, basically they were like, oh, we can't create all of this math and algorithms for the characters to respond.
Right.
Whereas in Breath of the Wild, if it starts raining, characters know to
go
change
under
their
a tree.
dialogue, go under a tree.
Yeah.
All these different things change. But they were like, maybe we can script it for 3 days. So every character, has their scripted storyline for those 3 days. So anyway, Link the Goron, one more little tidbit is I read this, I didn't experience this because I did not play the Majora's Mask 3D remake for the 3DS, but they did tweak that system a little bit in Majora's Mask 3D. And you actually, if you go as normal Link to the hotel owner or the person at the desk is a little smarter and they realize that you're not a Goron. So you actually have to go get
as similar as you look to a
right. You have to go get the Goron mask from what's his name, Darmania the Third first, and then transform to your Goron version. And then if you go in and say I'm Link, then you can get into the hotel.
So there's a version of Majora's Mask you could play where you never even run into Link, or not really.
Link the Goron?
Yeah.
I think
you said
so.
if he checks in, then he's just kind of.
So yeah, I can't recall specifically playing that part of the game, which I do recall. I probably played that in like 1999. It's been a long time for Majora's Mask. That part I played through.
You can't remember back to 1999?
I played through it completely when I was in college when the game came out.
Okay.
Since then, I have dipped into the game, but I have not beat it again. I look forward to doing that when we review it.
I look forward to even being able to play through one flippin' day because it stresses me out.
Yeah.
But the more I learn and hear about it, the more I do want to.
It stressed me out a lot too
Give
in the
it another
beginning.
shot.
And when you think about, it's not that it's 3 days and you're dead. It's more like 3 days and there's a checkpoint is what it turns into. Did you ever see the movie Edge of Tomorrow, better known as Live, Die, Repeat?
No.
It's a pretty cool movie. There's a sequel coming out, but that movie feels a lot like Majora's Mask to me. And I don't want to get too far off topic here. We should stay talking about our Gorons. But in that movie, Tom Cruise's character, without having any spoilers, finds that he kind of keeps reliving a day. It's a bit of science fiction Groundhog's Day.
Okay, fair
But
enough.
what happens is he's not caught in a loop. He actually can progress in his accomplishments because he does remember things from day to day to day, the same way that a character that Link would remember his actions in Majora's Mask. So if you learn something about a secret on day 2 or 3 Majora's Mask, you can actually you just know it in your head. You can apply it on day 1.
Gotcha.
So it's one of these things where maybe you run into Link, the Goron, on day 3, and you're like, well, this doesn't matter. This doesn't apply. It's not that character's useless. It's just like maybe you learned something. He said, well, I checked into the hotel 2 days ago. And so when the
you
3
go back,
days
you're like,
reset, then you go, well, let's go check that out. So that might help ebb your anxiety a little bit with that game. It's just thinking about it a little differently.
Well, my goal is to find Link, the Goron, then when I play Majora's Mask.
Sounds good. He kind of looks like a postman. He has like
Okay.
a postman hat on, in my opinion.
Okay, interesting.
Anything else?
Like other Gorons,
Yeah.
or
That might be all I have in mind.
I was thinking about other ones from Breath of the Wild because that one had you run into so many of them. I mean, between the mines and then the town and the mountain,
they're everywhere.
they're everywhere. I really like Bluto,
Yeah.
who is the old Goron boss who basically has you do all of his work for him.
He has the the tri-beard, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
right. Yeah.
He has the bad back. And I remember because Breath of the Wild, I mean, there's definitely some funny moments in that game, but this was like, I think the funniest character because he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do oh no, I can't do this thing. Go do it for me.
Yeah, he's being dramatic.
Yeah.
Don't you have to actually get him painkillers?
Yes, you
Yeah.
do. And then they, work for a time being, and then he's like, oh no,
shucks.
you have to do something else for me. So yeah, he sends you to find Yunobo, I think, because
Yeah, I think so.
and he's in charge of all the cannons, so you get yelled at by the other Gorons because no, those belong to the boss, Bluto. You can't touch his cannons.
That's right.
But it just made me laugh because he was like, okay, you'll have to do this for me. You have to do that for me. Go do all these things. And then,
He's a little grouchy.
he's a little grouchy.
He reminds me of the manta ray Zora in Breath of the Wild. I forget that guy's name, but I
Oh,
don't.
yeah,
I keep
yeah.
pulling us off of Gorons here. I apologize.
But I don't know. He just made me laugh. I think there are back cracking sound effects too involved with him.
I think I might recall that.
Yeah,
Yes.
it just made me laugh every time. I don't know. So that's
Bluto.
I just wanted to mention him because I liked him a lot. He kind of introduces you to the divine beast. He introduces you to the town and the characters. So he's definitely an important part of the game.
From a game design point of view, if you enter Goron City, Goron Town, I honestly can't remember what it's called in Breath of the Wild, but I'll call it Goron City.
Goronville,
Yeah, Goronville, Gorongaville.
Big Goronville town.
Village around. This isn't working.
Nope.
So anyway, if you enter Goron City from the front, which you definitely don't have to. In fact, I kind of accidentally sky sailed in from the side.
Hey guys.
Yeah, I just dropped right in there. But if you do because I was trying to avoid the path up to Goron City, Goron on the in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
So there's all the lizards, and I was definitely going more stealth, and I was going up and around and
Nope,
whatever.
I did the lizard route.
I usually try to avoid combat in Breath of the Wild. I'm much more into just being sneaky and flying around and stuff. But anyway, if you do enter from a game design point of view, I think that tri-beard isn't an accident because he does look, it's white and it's bright, and you come up into Goron City, and if you look up into the streets, you kind of see him right there centered in the distance.
Yeah.
And I think any player would be inclined to go talk to that Goron
Sure.
first or early.
Because he's interesting looking too. He
He's
looks
not-
different from the other ones,
That's
obviously.
right. I think I would suspect that that's not an accident from
Oh,
a
no.
game design point of view.
I can see that.
Any Gorons from Twilight Princess? I remember that the Gorons in Twilight Princess, literally some of them, as they get older, give off steam. They're like little volcanoes.
Oh, I didn't notice that. No, I didn't pick any
Yeah.
from that one. I wasn't sure if you would bring up Fyrus as one of
I
your-
mean, we could talk about Fyrus. We've just talked about him so much already.
Sure.
I did not put Fyrus in my notes, I'll confess.
Yeah, I didn't either.
because I don't, let's say this way. Fyrus is more of a boss than an NPC.
Sure.
Yeah, fine. You help him later, and he's kind of like, if I remember correctly, he's a bit of an oaf. When he comes back around, he's kind of like, Fyrus. Am I incorrect in my recollection?
I don't remember, but
he had he kind of had like, not the mohawk hair, but maybe the flat top kind of haircut.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But anyway, so I wouldn't say Fyrus does not stick out as a favorite Goron to me.
I couldn't think of any from Twilight Princess that really stuck out, whose like name I would remember or anything like that. So
there's the old guy that challenges you to sumo wrestling and stuff, but I don't know if there's really any and
there's like
characters.
The elders that you have to find in the dungeon, but they don't really do anything.
A few of them definitely have the little smoking volcanoes on their bodies.
Okay.
Which is interesting. That kind of feeds into Goron anatomy and lore a little bit.
Yeah. But none of them like stick out or like really fleshed out characters or anything like that. So no, I didn't pick any from that game. I don't think I have any others.
My
fiance wanted us to mention Goron Ivanisevic.
What?
Because he's an important Goron, in that he's a retired professional tennis player. He wanted to bring him up. Like, no, honey, we're talking about Zelda Gorons.
Goron, what's his name?
Goron Ivanisevic.
Okay.
So
I'm pretty sure
it was requested that we mention him as one of our favorite.
I think he has some non-canon experiences. I think he shows up in Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Maybe Hyrule Warriors.
Mario Tennis.
Yeah.
It's a Goron in Mario it's the wrong one. Anyway, never mind.
Nice.
Ignore me.
Well, I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on if they agree or disagree with some of the things we've said about the Gorons we've spoken about, or if you think about a Goron that you love so much and you'd like to share it with us, we'd love to talk about your comments in a future episode. You can tweet us at Another Zelda Pod on Twitter, or find us on Instagram at Another Zelda Podcast. Find us on Facebook by searching Another Zelda Podcast. Go to our actual website.
Google it.
Just Google. If you just Google it, that works out. So Another Zelda Podcast, as generic, we are almost joking with our title here. When we named the show Another Zelda Podcast,
right? It's just,
we had a moment where we were like,
one.
"Is this a bad idea naming it this?" But we just know there's so many other podcasts out there, and
right.
Just want to be part of the conversation. But anyway, it's ironically, if you do use the text Another Zelda and Podcast, our stuff pops up right away.
There you go.
So message us, let us know, leave comments in YouTube or whatever.
I'm sure there are other ones that we did not bring up that you guys
I'd like to learn a little bit about Goron in Oracle Seasons. I don't know anything about him. I wonder if there's a big fetch quest that's kind of interesting. Gorons, so that's our three tropes, you could say. Oftentimes there's fetch quests with Gorons. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they're traveling. There's a traveling Goron, and oftentimes there is an element of literally getting through rocks.
Yes.
Either for them, where they're strong enough to pound through the rocks, and sometimes you have to get, like in Twilight Princess, there's the famished or the Goron that needs to be quenched with the spring water.
Oh yeah.
In Minish Cap, there's some Gorons that I can't remember how you motivate them, but they break through some rocks for you.
It's like a symbiosis with the Gorons. They're helping you and you help them, and it's a happy family.
That's awesome.
We should put up a poll like, what's your favorite Goron? Is it Darunia or Daruk or Goron Ivanisevic?
I could put a Twitter poll out there.
Like one of the options is the tennis player.
I didn't catch that. Maybe. Maybe.
All right, so I think we're going to wrap this up for now, but where can people find you on the social medias?
Me personally, Raptor Paint, Instagram, Twitter, it's all just Raptor Paint, one word.
I only take cat pics on Instagram, and that's not exactly true, but I did recently take a cat pic, so
you
it's
gotta live up to your personal brand.
Mostly true. Yes, I definitely take cat pics.
Hey, do you guys follow I Only Take Cat Pics? Yeah, I did, but she doesn't take that many cat pics anymore, so I've
gotten reprimanded before. This isn't a cat pic.
She's damaging the value of her brand. I'm not sure what she's going to do for her 2019 quarterly financials, but I'm not sure about this I Only Take Cat Pics Instagram.
It was a risky move titling it that, but but I do. I take a lot of cat pics.
Well, I only paint velociraptors, so
perfect. Done. All right. Well, I guess we'll see you guys next time on.
Next time, I am going to be talking all about the development of the original The Legend of Zelda back in the 1980s.
Yes, and I'm going to listen.
Kate Fischer,
raptly.
I have done a deep dive. I'm in the middle of collecting a lot of notes, and I'm reading a million. I have found, in my research, transcripts of old interviews from Miyamoto and Koji Kondo, and
Cool.
I can't wait to tell you all about it.
Is there a documentary about Legend of Zelda yet?
I'm sure.
If
I
there
have
is, I
not
should probably watch it.
personally come across any. I mean, Nintendo released a big YouTube series for the making of Breath of the Wild that was
I think I may have
essentially
seen
it's
a
a
couple of
documentary.
those. Yeah.
I think there are some fan-made documentaries out there, but I think this is going to be exciting. I can't wait to tell you about it.
Awesome.
About it.
Well, that is what we will discuss next time, and we'll see you guys then on another episode of another Zelda podcast.
Cool, Kate.
Okay, bye.